Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you will receive alerts when there are new episodes. Go get it.
That's what I tell them. I've been grinding for so long, I wake up and chase my goals. I go out and I go get it. How to code, that's all I know. I don't succeed, then I don't breathe. Success, what does it mean? If I conquer all my goals, then I'm living out my dream. Dig deep, go out and get it. Success Chronicles. Compete until it's finished. Success Chronicles. Go take care of your business. Success Chronicles. It's deeper than just winning. Success Chronicles.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Chip Baker coming to you with another episode of the Success Chronicles. And today we have Chad and Jennifer Thompson with us. They are coming to us from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Had to make sure I put that in there. They are entrepreneurial couple that are doing some amazing things, business partners, life partners, growing together and different backgrounds, but come together and making some amazing things happen. And so thankful for them to be on this episode of the Success Chronicles, which is a relationship chronicle, a relationship series. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. Yeah. I mean, you got to get it in. You got to make it work, Well, talk to us about individually where you guys are from and how it was for you growing up.
Go ahead, honey.
I grew up here in Calgary, Alberta. I've been born and raised here. I lived here my whole life. I had a really good childhood. And then my parents divorced when I was 6, and that changed things a lot. I grew up with a single parent with my mom, and at the end of the day, we didn't have everything, but we had a lot of love, and she's my hero. She did everything for me. She's always been my biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan, and she always had my back in whatever I did. So I always felt very loved and supported growing up, even though I didn't have both parents, which sometimes kids have trouble with that. I was lucky because my mom was my mom and my dad growing up, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, she was strong enough to be both.
She was, yeah. She was.
I know that also well.
Yeah, it was funny because I'd give her a Mother's Day and a Father's Day card every year.
Yeah,
that's
right.
But I have absolutely, man. But I have a good relationship with my dad, I just grew up. I was never really into school. I didn't really love the mold. I didn't love being told what to do and when I should do it. And I guess I wasn't the best at following instructions, but I did love sports. And I really excelled in baseball and was supposed to play college baseball down in Alabama. Unfortunately, I hurt myself before my freshman year, and I struggled for a bit, and I bounced around from all the universities here in Calgary and didn't know what I wanted to do, and ended up in the bar industry. And that was supposed to be a 1 or 2 year plan, but it was one of those 1 or 2 year plans that turned into 12, and ran into our business 11 years ago, and it's really changed our life. I met, I'll talk a bit about it later, but I met Jen through the company, and that's just me. I love having fun. I love bettering myself, and that's something my mom taught me my whole life. So, everything I have growing up, I really owe to her.
There you go. How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, so I also grew up in Calgary, Alberta, and I was the firstborn. So in our culture, we definitely have a standard of always, getting high A's and really, really high expectations, especially for the firstborn. So I was automatically taught to, lead. And growing up, there was a lot of challenges just with all the expectations that was put on me. I was oftentimes, my parents came to me with opinions and said, hey, I need some advice on this. And at the age of 6, sometimes I would remember almost having to be the parent just to support my parents and give them some advice. And growing up, my sister and I didn't really get along, and she's 6 years younger than myself. What's interesting now is she's in business with us. So we've really supported her, and she's become one of my closest friends now. So that relationship has completely transformed just with, who I've grown to be and who she's grown to be as well in the business. My parents always taught us to work really hard. We were really poor growing up. And for my parents immigrating from Vietnam, my mom from Vietnam, my dad from Hong Kong, they both came here on pretty much nothing, and they had to work their way up, build their own business. And I really, really acknowledge my parents for what they've done. And just with the relationship, I mean, obviously they did the best that they could, but they had patterns of always wanting divorces every couple of years. And so it was very unstable. And I remember thinking, you know, my parents would break up this time for sure. And I remember Chet and I started dating, and there was this one time I said, this is it. Like, my parents are certainly getting a divorce this time. And I remember crying, and it didn't happen. So it's just a cycle. And thinking about that, I made a promise to myself growing up that I would never, ever be in that situation of wanting a divorce and impacting my kids that way. So, but I love my parents that, you know, they're doing much better now. And we've all just kind of become a lot better just in the space that we're all in now.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how our experiences of what we go through shape us and mold us. You know, how you talked about, Chad, you know, your loving environment with your mother and father, you know, then, you know, Jennifer, you talked about your, you know, the unstableness, and, you know, it's amazing how now you can take that and bring that together and make it an amazing situation for the both of you and your family and kids.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the cool thing about relationships. And I think that's why I do a relationship series, because I always like to see, I think our differences make us unique.
Yep. Absolutely.
You know, and when we can come together with our differences and then make our own thing, you know, in our relationship, you know, I think that's a great thing. That's a true blessing.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, you talked about you guys meeting through the company, but if you don't mind, and we talked about this a little bit off air, you know, I know you probably have separate stories of how you met, but if you guys, yeah. But if you don't mind sharing that, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's probably my favorite story that's ever happened to me. So, yeah, I mean, I just remember it was January the 3rd, 2012. And we do an open house session at our office every week. And it was the very first one of that year. And I was doing the first part of the presentation. And I just remember this beautiful girl walking into the presentation room. And I was like, wow, who is that? Whose guest is that? Man, it was literally like time stopped. It was one of those like movie moments.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I did the presentation, and she sat front row. I remember exactly where she sat, and I don't even remember how many other people were there, because I was really only focused on one. And it was cool. You know, I met her. She came into the office a few days later, and I came in and tried to be charming and funny. And then she actually started in our business, and we were actually out at a pub one night, and I'm like, I got to get this girl's number. I got to think of something clever. And so I'm like, hey, Jen, where do you live? And she's like, oh, I live here. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah, I live like 10 minutes from here. She's like, oh, where do you live? I'm like, oh, by Mount Royal University. She's like, that's not 10 minutes. And I said, why don't you give me your phone number? I'll text you when I get home, just to show you that it's 10 minutes.
And Chad, I see you. I see you.
Yeah, it worked, man. And then sure enough, you know what, we have an interesting story. I mean, it's we hung out for a bit, but unfortunately at that time I had a bit of just commitment issues, you know, and I coming from a broken home, I still had a bit of commitment issues, and we hung out a lot, and I really cared a lot about her. And I was like, man, but I never took the step to really share my feelings and tell her how I felt. And we actually ended up kind of parting ways for a bit. And just because I wasn't direct enough with her and told her how I was feeling. So anyone listening to this, make sure you're direct with people. And if you care about them, tell them how you feel. And I never did that. So she actually ended up dating somebody else for a period of time. And, but I never forgot about her, right? I was always like thinking about her. You know, she'd kind of pop into the bar I worked at once in a while, or I'd just think about her and call her. And it's funny how life works, man. You know, sometimes some girls take longer to get over than others. And 6 months later, I was just kind of getting over her. And I think the world must have told her that, because all of a sudden I got a text one night, and she's like, hey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. And I'm like, whoa, okay, what's going on? And yeah, and I'm like, I'm not going to think too much about it. And then it was actually my birthday. She texted me on my birthday, and she was like, hey, I heard this Usher song. So I'm a big Usher fan. And she's like, I thought about you. And And then the next day I said, hey, why don't you come over and we'll order Chinese food and watch Modern Family, and she never left. So
Yeah.
And then I didn't make the same mistake twice. I let her know how I felt. So
Hey, so when she came over for the deal, were you playing the Usher song? Yeah. Yeah. You're dancing and everything, man.
I should have been.
I think that was playing in the background of your mind.
Might probably.
Yeah. Hey, I get it. You had to be cool, right? Like,
Yeah,
hey,
gotta be cool, man.
You know what? And the inside, you like,
Yeah, I was pretty excited. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So okay, so Jen, what about your side of it?
Yeah, it's very similar, right? It was almost like serendipity. I was actually called by this client, and I kept on hearing about the company's name. I actually heard about the company in 2005. And at the time, I signed on to be a client, and the business wasn't right timing for me. And the person that brought me in was getting trained by a guy named Stephen Holbrook. And the funny thing is, in 2012, when I walked into the office, Stephen Holbrook was there. And he's like, Jen Lowe. I was like, hey, how are ya? And, Stephen ends up being Chad's best friend and also our, best man at our wedding as well. And I just thought so many times I kept on,
I've been to meet him.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, I remember the universe giving me so many signs of saying, hey, just go back to this office. Tons and tons of my clients that in my previous career would say, you got to come to my office. And I'd hear it about probably 3-4 times every year. And I remember in 2012, I just said to myself, yeah, I'll come to the office and see where that goes. And that's when I met Chad. And then, like you said, we parted ways for a little bit. And, the universe brought us back together because at that point in time, I realized that he was the person that was for me. Like, he was in front of me the whole time, but yet I didn't realize it. And before we reconnected again, I actually made a list of all the things I wanted in a guy. Wow. And he checked off 99.9% of it.
Almost 100. Almost 100.
You're the man, Chad. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you put out there what you want to the universe. The universe always delivers, but you gotta make sure that you listen because it comes in different forms to give you a sign. Yeah,
and I'll just add one last thing. I mean, I remember at the time I was I don't want to say it was rock bottom, but I wasn't at a good place. Yeah. I just things weren't going well, and there was just that one thing missing in my life. And I remember ever since the day that Jen called me, my life has been unbelievable. I look at her as like my savior, and it scares me to think if we never would have connected again. It really scares me to think where I'd be at. So, yeah,
that's awesome, man. That's good stuff. Well, I'm happy for you guys, and so glad that worked out for you. And but I knew you weren't gonna let that girl get away, though.
No, not second time.
Hey, you saw her walk through that door like, hey, I gotta lock this up.
Not the second time.
Well,
getting emotional here.
Yeah, I know, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Like I said, it's special when we can find somebody that means that much to us, and like I said, you come together and make magic. Yeah. So, how long have you guys been together?
Well, since 2012 in October.
Yeah, it'll be 6 years this October.
Yeah,
that we've been together, and we're about to have we'll have our third wedding anniversary here on August 28th. So
that's cool. Congratulations!
And I love him so much that he's going to be on a golf trip during our anniversary because I totally understand and I get it.
Hey, Chad. Hey. Keep her.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, hey, Jen. Oh, hey.
I get it. I get it.
I tell you a funny story about myself. I'm a, I told you, a teacher coach, football coach. And, in Texas, football is life. And so, our anniversary is during football season. I got married. We got married before I was a teacher coach. We were in college, but same thing. She understands that it's a part of it, and that's what it is. So, well, what are three important things you guys feel it takes to have a successful relationship?
Want to go first?
Sure, I can go first.
Yeah, I'll go. Jen, go first.
Sure. I think the first thing is just really creating space for your spouse or your significant other to be who they are. I remember the moment that I decided that I wanted to marry Chad was I actually got into a really bad car accident, and he came to pick me up, and I just bawled. I just cried and cried, and he just held me, and he didn't say a single word. He didn't say like, it's going to be okay, or, let me fix it. Like, just not to fix your partner and just allow them to be and have that space to just let them, whether they are going to cry or they're going through something, and just not making it wrong. Just allowing them to be unconditionally and allowing them to feel unconditional love. The second thing is giving up something in order to create something else. So for me, like, I've always been independent. So for me, it's ego. I got to give up my ego in order to create space and love and connection for him. And that goes with everything. It's who I'm showing up as, right? So if I'm frustrated or I'm pissed off, it's giving that up to create the compassion that I'm committed to, the possibility of being compassion, love, and understanding for Chad. So the giving up part, what we oftentimes default to being, not by choice, but it's kind of our automatic way of survival and how we show up, or how I show up.
What we learn, what we go through as we live and learn, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the third thing is just knowing what's important for him and what kind of game we're playing together. My personal game is to support him no matter what it is so that he can win. And with the 5 love languages, that's a really good book that has supported us, is knowing what's important to fill that love tank. For me, it's unconditional, undivided time, quality time. And so when that tank's full, he can go and do whatever he wants. He can go on his golf trip. And and asking a lot of questions. That's a really good way to know what's important for your partner, is knowing, hey, like what's that like? What's important to you? How can I support you? What's going good? What's not going good? And just really checking in with each other. We have like a weekly meeting every week on Thursday mornings where we just have undivided attention for one another, and we'll go and do something together, have golf balls, have brunch, and we just chat about business and life. And one day I was kind of jokingly saying, hey, this is our relationship assessment. He's like, what? I'm like, it's like, every couple months check in, see how we're doing. But just being curious. I think that's really important in knowing your partner, because we all grow and there's different things that happen, and it's being curious and being kind to one another, I think, is most important.
I like it. Good stuff.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add to that, Chad? Or
yeah, I've got a few. I mean, for me, I think and I agree 110% with everything that Jen said. But for me, a big one is that I think for me, I don't have like expectations of Jen. I think a lot of relationships, people have all these expectations that this person needs to do this and this person needs to do that. And I don't have expectations of her, because we're in this together. And I mean, if, sometimes she'll be like, sorry, I didn't make supper. I'm like, well, I can make supper. It's not like, I can't, you know what I mean? So I don't have like big expectations of her. My only expectations are that she communicates with me and that we're open about everything. That's my only expectations. Other than that, I just want her to be herself and enjoy her journey, and we can enjoy this journey together. I find when there's too many expectations or stories that couples create of how something should be, then that's when a lot of problems come, where we don't have any stories of how things should be. We just we go with the flow, and we're very, adaptable with the ways we think, and we're very open-minded with each other, which really makes a big difference. I think another one for me is listening, fellas.
Hey, fellas, listen to this.
Listen, just listen. Yeah. A lot of times, like Jen will if she's upset about something, I'll just listen. I don't, like she said, I don't try to coach her, and I don't try to give her advice unless she asks for it. Yeah. Because a lot of times people just need somebody to listen. They'll figure it out with what they're doing. They don't, and I find with her, sometimes she'll just talk, and afterwards she's like, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I didn't even have to do anything except listen, right? So, but I I think one of the biggest things that we do in our world right now is we don't listen enough. And actually, it's not talking that's the best form of communication. It's how you listen, right? Exactly, which is super important. And then I think the biggest one for us, and advice I would give to people, is just go grow together as a couple. You know, Jen and I do a ton of personal development stuff together. Mm-hmm. You know, we're very big into the Landmark program, like the Landmark Forum, which was life-changing for me and relationship-changing for us, just to understand where other people are coming from, right? And that her definition of something that happened is different than mine. And we don't need to argue about it, but we can have a conversation. And we've done things through Peak Potentials like Warrior Camp and Wizard Camp, and we're always developing together, right? We're always growing together. And I think if I were to give any piece of advice, any one piece of advice to couples out there, it would be go grow together as a couple, right? Go do those things together and expand your world, expand your mind. And it just creates a more open, safe environment, I find, in your home. Mm-hmm. And it's just better communication, and it's just cool to be on the same page.
Hey, Jen,
mm-hmm.
That's pretty good stuff right there.
Yeah, he's a keeper too.
Oh, hey, Chad. Hey, man. Hey, that is some good stuff. You know.
Thank you.
I totally agree. You know, and so just kind of, you know, don't let your spouse have space. Just kind of recapping here. Give up something to create something great. You know, knowing what's important to your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't have expectations. Just go with the flow and, you know, create it. Listen.
Absolutely.
You know,
listen
and grow together as a couple. Man, that's awesome stuff, guys. That's good stuff to share. And for you guys that are couples that are listening, I 100% agree with all of those. You know, and so at the end, you kind of gave some advice, and that's my last question. You know, if you had to pick, maybe say one thing, Jen, one thing, Chad, of advice to give to couples, what would that be?
I have two. Is that okay?
Whatever you want, Jen. Whatever you want. Hey, and Chad and I are listening.
Awesome.
Damn. So y'all listened, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Right?
I caught on right away. I knew.
Hey, but let me go back. Like, you know, I grew up single parent with a mother and a sister. I mean, almost 20 years. So I know that one. Big time.
Awesome. I would say the first thing is appreciate. So coming from a space of gratitude. I mean, just doing things that we would do when we're dating. And I always say that to Chad. It's like, you know, there's no difference. You know, keeping that energy and keeping that, you know, fire lit. Like, I'll do little silly things and write him notes. Like, I packed him a bag of blueberries last week and wrote, you know, to my amazing husband, and just gave him a little cute note, and he giggled when he opened his bag.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's just having those small things that add up to big things, because, you know, we all want to be appreciated and acknowledged and loved. And what I would want for myself is what I will give to Chad, because I can't expect him to do the things that I'm not willing to do. And that leads into my second point, is being 100% responsible. So what that means is I'm 100% responsible for my own feelings. Mm-hmm. You know, Chad can't make me feel a certain way unless I create a story or a meaning to what's happening. So if I'm frustrated, that's on me. If I'm pissed off at what he's doing, that's on me. And I can also switch that and say, hey, I'm choosing to be happy because I'm committed to a supportive, you know, loving and unconditionally loving, being that wife that I'm committed to being. So when I'm living that possibility and I'm being that, then I get to choose what I'm feeling. So I can't ever expect him to make me feel a certain way. If, you know, I show up pissed off, he can't do anything to not make me feel pissed off, vice versa, where I can just say, hey, I'm choosing to come and show up as a possibility of being happy and loving and fun. And that's the game that I'm out to play.
I like it. And y'all are going to win, because that's a really good game, and the way you play it is awesome.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just reiterate what Jen said. I'm a huge believer in taking 100% personal responsibility for your life. you know, if I get upset by anything or whatever, that's my choice that I'm going to get upset. So that's my responsibility at the end of the day. And I think if more people took 100% responsibility for their life and in their relationships, we'd have way less problems in our world today. And I'm a big believer in that. And I guess the second thing for me, I said grow as a couple, but I just think show your spouse how much you love them every day. You know, one of my favorite times of the day is every morning I get up. I usually go to the gym before Jen. Sometimes she comes with me, but I'll get up around 6:30, and then every day I get ready. And before I leave, I just go lay down with her in bed for like 3-4 minutes, and I just hold her and I just appreciate her, and I let her know how much I love her, and then I leave. And it's such a small little thing, but for me it means the world, and I know for her it means the world too. And it's just show each other appreciation, you know, even if it's for 3 minutes a day. Because I think we get too busy in our lives and we forget how much that minute or two of appreciation can mean. So
Sure.
Yeah, and those small moments are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you just when you make a point to be on point, you know, in those small moments, when you get to bigger things, the bigger things don't matter because you've taken care of the smaller things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. So again, thank you guys for
Thank
taking
you.
the time.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and sharing, you know, your relationship and your life stories and those things. I think it'll be very beneficial for couples to check it out. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chet.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching this episode. We'll see you next time. God bless. Go get it.